What if all the words you never sent were still waiting in one quiet house? At the very end of a forgotten street stood a house that, to any passerby, looked perfectly ordinary. But the people who lived in the town, they knew better. They spoke of it in whispers, with a mix of reverence and a little bit of sadness. They called it the House of Unsent Letters. From the outside, you'd see nothing but weathered wood and ivy-covered walls. But inside, it held the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. The air in the house was thick with silence, yet it felt like 1,000,000 voices were screaming all at once. Every room, from the dusty attic to the chilly basement, was filled with stacks and piles of envelopes. They were letters that had been written with trembling hands and tear-stained ink, but had never found their way to a mailbox. They were addressed to old friends, lost loves, and distant family. Letters that started with the heaviest words: "I'm sorry," "I miss you," "I love you," and the often forgotten "thank you." Each one was a story frozen in time, a conversation that never happened. One rainy afternoon, as the sky wept over the town, the front door creaked open. A young woman stepped inside, her clothes damp from the storm. In her pocket, she clutched a letter of her own, one she had written and rewritten countless times, but had never found the courage to send. She looked around, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. The sheer volume of paper, of silent words, was overwhelming. It was a library of regret. A kind-faced old caretaker emerged from the shadows, his footsteps soft on the wooden floor. He smiled gently, as if he knew exactly why she was there. "You are not the only one," he said, his voice a comforting whisper. "Everyone who comes here brings a piece of their heart they were too afraid to share. This house keeps their words safe." He spoke as if the letters were living things, fragile birds that were too scared to fly. The caretaker then led her through the labyrinth of rooms, pointing out letters that had been there for decades. He showed her one from a soldier to his sweetheart, filled with dreams of a future that never came. Another was a daughter's apology to her father, written years after he was gone. "Some people never came back for their letters," he said softly, his eyes distant. "Their words stayed here, safe and sound. But their chance to be heard, that didn't." The words hung in the air, heavier than any dust. The woman pulled her own letter from her pocket. The envelope felt heavy, not just with paper, but with fear and uncertainty. Her hands shook as she held it. The caretaker looked at her, his gaze kind but direct. "Do you want your words to live in this house forever?" he asked. "Or in someone's heart?" She stood there for what felt like an eternity, the silent letters all around her seeming to hold their breath. Then, with a deep sigh, she made her choice. She carefully placed the letter back into her pocket, turned, and walked toward the door. A new sense of courage lighting up her face. Regret is what happens when your words never leave the page. Hope is what happens when you give them a chance. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to learn English with stories for more content like this.